Hello, I am Lindsay Montgomery, the chairing member of the Judicial Appointments Board for Scotland. In the second half of August, JABS will be launching a competition for the Office of Sheriff Principal of the Sheriffdom of Grampian, Highland and Islands. This is an important judicial leadership role and provides a valuable opportunity to contribute to justice in Scotland. To help you find out more about the role of Sheriff Principal and the recruitment process, JABS and the Judicial Office for Scotland have developed this online video. The speakers are Sheriff Principal Aisha Anwar, Sheriff Principal of Glasgow and Strathkelvin, who will speak about the role of Sheriff Principal. Lady Halding, Senator of the College of Justice and a judicial member of JABS, and Liz Burnley, a lay JABS board member, who will share their insights about the JABS recruitment process. If you have any questions on the role, there is an opportunity to ask them anonymously via a link on our website. Alternatively, you can email our mailbox. The email address is mailbox@jabs.gov.scot. The answers to these questions will be posted on our website as quickly as possible to assist potential applicants. Thank you for considering this opportunity to contribute to justice in Scotland.
As a Sheriff Principal, you're required to wear many hats. You are a manager, you're a leader, and you're an appellate judge. The role is incredibly varied. Sometimes you're a problem solver, other times you're an innovator. All Sheriff's Principal sit in the Sheriff Appeal Court and they deal with civil and criminal appeals. And that work can be interesting and it can raise complex areas of the law. Sheriff's Principal are also responsible for the efficient disposal of business in their sheriffdom. And what that means is that you're required to be aware of the resources that are available to you and you're required to consider how best to use those resources to produce the best results for accused persons, for victims, for witnesses, and for those who appear in and work in our courts. It also involves working with other justice partner agencies, whether that's the Crown, defence agents or the police, to deliver an efficient justice system. And sometimes that involves identifying solutions to problems and bringing everyone together to work better on projects to improve processes and ways of working. And of course, you have responsibility for the sheriffs within your sheriffdom. So you're required to deal with matters such as training and development, pastoral care and welfare.
Hello, my name is Shona Haldane and I'm a Senator of the College of Justice and I'm also a judicial member of the Judicial Appointments Board for Scotland. The Judicial Appointments Board for Scotland is, as you will be aware, about to launch a competition to appoint a new Sheriff Principal to the Sheriffdom of Grampian, Highland and Islands. Any of you who are considering applying will of course have to complete the application form process and then, if invited for interview, come to the Judicial Appointments Board office to be interviewed for the post. The application and indeed the interview in due course is divided into two parts. The first is a legal aspect and the second is personal and judicial qualities. I just want to say a few words to you today, focusing particularly on the legal aspect of the application process. It goes without saying that anyone aspiring to the post of Sheriff Principal of Grampian, Highland and Islands will have to demonstrate the highest level of legal ability and expertise. And the form will ask you in the first instance to give examples of areas of work in which you have previous experience or which you've practiced. It's a fairly extensive list. Please don't feel that you are going to be expected to offer experience in every single area. That's not at all the purpose of the form. It's just to understand in relation to each candidate the breadth and depth of experience that they've had throughout their career. You'll also be asked to give examples of from your own current practice, whatever that may be and from whatever background you come. Please try and think hard about this section of the form. Try and give us the best examples you can that show not only the skills and experience that you've built up in your current area of practice, but how you think those skills and expertise might transfer across to areas with which you are less familiar, but which you might well encounter in your role as Sheriff Principal. Of course, an important aspect of the role of Sheriff Principal is sitting at an appellate level in the Sheriff Appeal Court. And whilst it's not at all expected that anyone applying for the role should have current appellate experience, it would be useful to know from your examples and how you, the information you give us in the forum, how you think your legal knowledge and expertise could translate across to that particular aspect of the role. It's obviously therefore also important that you're able to demonstrate that you are able quickly and efficiently to master and get on top of new areas of law with which you have not previously been familiar. There will also be a part of the forum that asks you to provide examples of written work. There will be a word limit in relation to these examples, and I would urge you please to read that section of the form carefully, because if you are providing a lengthy document, for example, you will be asked to highlight the passage up to the limit of the applicable word limit that best showcases and demonstrates your legal skills and experience. If you don't highlight the passage, then I'm afraid the members of the panel will simply have to begin at the beginning and stop when they get to the end of the word count limit. And that may be, as a matter of fact, nowhere near the passage that you are in fact wanting the panel to consider. So the word limit and highlighting that are important factors that I really would urge you to pay close attention to. But the written work, as with the other aspects of the legal application, you should give a good deal of thought to and see if you can offer examples that showcase your particular strengths in your practice as it currently is, wherever that may be and whatever role you currently are performing, and also how perhaps it might showcase these other aspects, for example, your ability to acquire new skills, new legal knowledge, to acquire those promptly and efficiently, and just your ability to carry across your skills and knowledge into other areas. So there's a lot to think about when completing this form, and that's before you even get on to the personal and judicial qualities and aspect of the application process. But the effort you put in at this stage, I'm sure, will be repaid in due course, and I do wish each and every one of you who are considering applying the very best of luck and look forward to welcoming the successful candidate in due course as a colleague in the judiciary.
Hello, I'm Liz Burnley and I'm a lay member of the Judicial Appointments Board for Scotland, or JABS. I'll be a panel member for the forthcoming Sheriff Principal competition, and I would like to just share some insights about the JABS application process and hopefully give you some useful information if you're considering applying. First then, let me start by telling you about the forthcoming Sheriff Principal recruitment. The advert will go live in the second half of August, and you'll be able to find the advert on the JABS website. Included with that will be a role profile document produced by Judicial Office, and there's also a guidance note from JABS which gives more information and explains all the stages of the recruitment process. Finally, there is an application which is accessed via a portal, and I'll say a little bit more about that later on. After opening, there is a 4-week window to apply, and then JABS will shortlist applications and interviews will be held in early November. We expect to make recommendations for appointment in December, and successful candidates will be expected to take part in induction, which is through the Judicial Institute, at the beginning of March. Full details of this and the process are all on the website, and I would encourage you to familiarise yourself with all of the information at the outset. We welcome applications from any part of the profession, and we don't give any greater weight to any particular type of experience. However, you do need to demonstrate that you can meet the criteria for the post, and this includes possessing the high level of legal knowledge and skills and ability, including legal analysis and interpretation of the law, which is required to meet the requirements of the Sheriff Appeal Court. You'll also need to be able to deal effectively with areas of law which are new to you, and we'll be looking for evidence of that. During the whole process, you'll be asked to demonstrate your legal competence and also to provide evidence of how you match up with the required personal and judicial qualities. For example, leadership and working with others, exercising judgment, communicating effectively, etc. Both elements, legal and personal and judicial, are equally important. As well as demonstrating your high level of legal knowledge, we're also looking for evidence that you have the personal and judicial qualities required for what is a very significant and challenging role. So let's start by talking a little bit about the application form. There are four main parts to that. The first part is personal information, qualifications, career history and eligibility. So I suppose that's the easy part of the form. Then there is a personal statement. Then some questions about your good character and conduct. And the last section is the self-assessment section, which is in two parts: legal competence and personal and judicial qualities. So firstly, a bit of practical advice about completing the form. Please do ensure that you give yourself enough time to think about and then to complete your application. Unless you're very experienced at this, it's not something you can just do in an evening, and I would really caution against that. My advice would be to approach the form perhaps in sections. You might deal with legal competence and then return to the form again to look at the personal and judicial qualities, and perhaps set some time aside to make sure you've got the right supporting evidence that you're going to use in the form. I'd also recommend that you return to the draft form after a few days before you submit it, to make sure that you're checking it with a fresh pair of eyes to see that you've covered all of the things that we're asking of you. Applications are submitted, as I mentioned, via a portal on our website, and you can save an application in progress and return to it as often as you need. Of course, you can cut and paste from an externally produced document in other software, and another piece of advice would be to take the opportunity to spell check before you submit. You might be surprised how often this is clearly not done. The guidance note, which is available on the website, will give you more detailed information about what's needed from you, and we would really urge you to read that very thoroughly before you start. For each of the personal and judicial qualities, you'll be asked to give an example that demonstrates how you meet the criterion. You might feel you can provide evidence better if you give more than one example. That's fine, but make sure that each gives enough detail for the panel to be able to assess the evidence you give us. Multiple examples could mean that you just don't give sufficient detail on any. So have this in mind when you're choosing how best to give your evidence. Make sure you read really carefully what's required. We need to know about what you actually did in a particular situation. It's not enough to say, I've always done something, or I'm known for being really strong in this area. We need to know what you actually did in a specific situation. Throughout the form, I would encourage you to be open about any gaps in your experience. Demonstrating self-awareness and insight is a strength, and you can show that you've thought about how you might bridge the gaps, or indeed if you can show what steps you've taken, then all the better. There's a natural tendency, perhaps understandably, to want to share examples where you've successfully achieved something. And that's fine. But sometimes examples that don't have a positive ending can often be the best, particularly if you can show that you've demonstrated your ability to reflect on why the situation might have turned out the way it did and what you might do differently. The personal statement and self-assessment sections are, I think, for most people, the most challenging parts, not least because there's a word limit on each of the sections. The personal statement is important. We're asking you to tell us why you're suitable for the role, as it's outlined in the role profile, and what you consider the challenging aspects of the role and how you would address those. We're looking for some depth in your answer to show us that you've really understood what the role is about, and for you to show us how your skills and experience match what we're looking for. If you see a particular aspect of the role as challenging for you, it's helpful to acknowledge that, but to go on to tell us what you would do or what you've already done to address any gaps. So I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about the interview stage. So congratulations. Let's assume you've managed to get through the application stage and you're shortlisted for interview. The first thing to say is please make sure that you devote the appropriate amount of time to preparing for the interview. There will be materials to consider and prepare for case studies and presentation, and you'll also need to prepare for the questions that you will be asked. It's important that you didn't use all your applications at the application stage. So think about what you could tell the panel at interview that provides more insight into you and your experience and your skills. Past candidates tell us that they typically spend several days preparing for an interview at this level, but of course there's no hard and fast rule on that. So what does the process involve? You'll be interviewed by a panel of 6, which comprises of 3 judicial and legal members and 3 lay members. Also in the room will be a note taker. The case studies will often form the first part of the interview, and Lady Haldane tells you more about that part. There'll also be a presentation where you're given a topic in advance and asked to make a short presentation to the panel. This is an important part of the evidence, and what we're looking for is evidence of the depth of your understanding of the subject matter and your ability to convey your ideas to the panel. The next part of the interview will focus on the personal and judicial qualities. All parts are equally important, and we make no apology for the interview process being quite an arduous one overall. It needs to be, because we need to test your competence and to gain as much insight as we can about your potential for the role. So in covering the personal and judicial qualities, there will often be a mix of scenario type questions and questions designed to test how your experience matches the required criteria. So those questions would typically ask you to tell us about a time when you did something, or give us an example of a situation where something happened. We know it's sometimes seen as the hard part of the interview, but we're always looking for candidates to give us good examples of how they meet the criteria. As I've said before, the best examples can often come from situations where things didn't go as you wanted them to. But if you can reflect on that and reflect on what you would do differently, that can be very powerful and also provide us with good evidence. It's always good to have a range of experiences to draw on, but try not to rely too heavily on pre-prepared examples. We don't want candidates to merely read out a verbatim example. And of course, it runs the risk that it doesn't actually address the specific question that's been asked. At the end of the interview, we will ask you some more general questions about how you'll undertake what are often very challenging requirements for this role. We'll explore with you how you will organise personally to cover the geographical challenges of the role in Grampian, Highland and Islands, and how you can demonstrate the resilience to undertake the role successfully. That's a significant part of what's required. Finally, we'll ask about any character and conduct issues that we need to be aware of, and we'll confirm your understanding of the Judicial Code of Ethics and how you will comply with that, and whether you'd need to make any changes to do so. It's important that you have given some thought to these areas beforehand as part of your preparation, both for the application stage and also for the interview. We absolutely recognise that interviews can be very daunting. Often the most experienced people feel under considerable pressure because we're not used to interviews, and we're often not used to talking to other people about ourselves. We absolutely understand that, and we will do our best to put you at your ease, but we do recognise that it is a challenging process. So just a few final thoughts from me. Remember that it is a competitive process, and whilst your application is being assessed against the criteria, it's also being considered alongside other applications. So you need to give yourself the best chance to set yourself apart from others. You need to be asking yourself perhaps a number of questions in preparation. Perhaps the most significant question, are you ready? Is this the right time? How well do you understand the role for which you're applying? What have you done to try to understand it better? How would you make it work in practice if you were appointed? Have you thought about whether you'll be a good fit for the role? What would you bring to it? What areas would you need to work on? Can you demonstrate in your application that you've thought about all of these things and told us about any steps that you've taken to plug the gaps that might be there? Are the examples that you've chosen the very best ones that you can to illustrate how you meet the criteria? Have you given us your best evidence effectively? And of course, are you able to commit enough time to the process to do both the application and interview stages justice? So I'd like to thank you very much for your interest, and I hope that we will, of course, receive your well-considered and thoroughly prepared applications in due course. Thank you very much.